Imagine starting your adult life already thousands of dollars in the red. Before the first full-time paycheck even arrives, the weight of loans, credit card debt, and buy now pay later traps are already pulling you under. For Gen Z, this isn't a worst-case scenario. It's the reality. A reality where you turn 18, take your first independent financial steps, and find yourself already locked into a system designed to keep you living paycheck to paycheck for the rest of your life. By the time many Gen Z adults hit 25, they aren't just struggling with a little credit card debt or a few missed payments. They are facing a financial crisis more intense, more widespread, and more emotionally devastating than any generation before them. Saddled with buy now pay later debts for basic needs like shoes and clothes, balancing multiple credit card payments, and battling skyrocketing living costs, Gen Z is discovering that hard work alone isn't enough to escape the trap. The truth is brutal. Gen Z didn't build this broken system. They inherited it. They didn't ask for a world where wages remain stagnant while inflation eats away at every dollar. They didn't demand a world where everything from rent to groceries to gas can only be afforded on credit. And yet, they are paying the steepest price for an economy that promises opportunity while delivering financial chains disguised as convenience. Buy now pay later apps offer the illusion of freedom, the idea that you can have what you need today and deal with it later. Credit cards market themselves as tools of empowerment. Easy approvals, flashy rewards programs, low minimum payments, all designed to trap young adults into believing debt is not just manageable, but normal. But behind the slick marketing and friendly branding, a much harsher reality is waiting. Miss one payment. Fall behind once. And suddenly, interest rates and fees turn manageable debts into insurmountable mountains. This isn't just a Gen Z problem. It's a warning for everyone. Millennials, Gen X, even boomers, the financial trap set today will ripple outward, impacting parents, families, communities, and future generations. Gen Z is simply the first full generation to walk blindly into the perfect storm. A collapsing cost of living, an explosion of easy credit, and an economy that demands more while offering less. Understanding the Gen Z debt trap isn't about pointing fingers. It's about pulling back the curtain. It's about revealing the systems that make escaping debt almost impossible once you're inside. Because if we can understand how the trap works, maybe, just maybe, we can help an entire generation find a way out before it's too late. The rise of a trapped generation. Stepping into adulthood has always carried challenges, but for Gen Z in 2025, adulting is less a rite of passage and more a financial minefield. It's not just about paying bills or getting that first job anymore. It's about surviving in a world where every basic necessity demands a piece of your future earnings. The real cost of adulthood today is measured in borrowed money, growing anxiety, and dreams put on indefinite hold. College used to be seen as the golden ticket, the undeniable path toward a better life. But what happens when that golden ticket comes wrapped in crushing student loans? For Gen Z, the answer is devastating. The average college graduate in the United States now leaves school with over $30,000 in student debt. And that number is only climbing. The promise of education as the great equalizer feels hollow when even entry-level jobs often require years of experience, and starting salaries haven't kept pace with skyrocketing living expenses. Housing offers no refuge. Rent prices in most major cities have surged by more than 20% in just the past few years. For many young adults, the idea of buying a home is not just delayed, it's almost laughable. Saving for a down payment is a fantasy when every paycheck barely covers rent, utilities, transportation, and groceries. Add in the reality of inflation, where basic food and gas prices fluctuate wildly, and you begin to see why living paycheck to paycheck has become the standard rather than the exception. The financial struggles Gen Z faces aren't just isolated incidents. They are systemic pressures built into the fabric of everyday life. And when faced with these pressures, many young adults turn to the tools that seem designed to help them bridge the gap. Credit cards offer immediate purchasing power, with promises of cashback rewards and low introductory rates. Buy now pay later apps make it easy to grab new clothes, tech gadgets, or even groceries with the assurance that payment can wait for another day. Pay-as-you-go services whisper an enticing message: you don't need to have the money today to live the life you want. But these first financial footsteps often lead straight into deep and dangerous traps. A pair of sneakers bought with a buy now pay later service can spiral into months of payments, hidden interest, and fees. A few small charges on a new credit card can quietly accumulate into a balance that feels impossible to clear. Every transaction seems harmless on its own, but together they weave a web of debt that tightens with every missed due date, every mounting late fee. The statistics tell the story more clearly than anything else. As of 2025, the average Gen Z adult carries more than $20,000 in non-mortgage debt, a figure that includes credit cards, student loans, personal loans, and buy now pay later obligations. Even those who never pursued higher education find themselves tangled in financial obligations they can't easily escape. Many are finding that the so-called necessities of modern life, a smartphone, a reliable car, access to the internet, all come tied to payment plans, contracts, and revolving credit balances. For many young adults, the journey into debt begins before they even leave their parents' homes. Surveys show that nearly 40% of Gen Z had opened a credit account or used a buy now pay later service before the age of 18. By the time they reach their early 20s, many are juggling multiple sources of debt with little understanding of how interest, late fees, and minimum payments really work. Financial literacy programs, if they exist at all, are often optional electives, leaving countless young adults vulnerable to predatory financial systems. The rise of pay-as-you-go culture has normalized a deeply unsustainable lifestyle. Renting a phone instead of buying it outright, paying for access to movies instead of owning a collection, subscribing to clothing rental services instead of purchasing garments. It's a world where ownership is an illusion and constant payments are the cost of existing. For Gen Z, the cumulative impact of these constant small debts is a slow and steady bleed that drains their financial power before it has a chance to grow. As this generation tries to build a life, they are running a race against invisible weights. They are expected to save for retirement, build an emergency fund, invest for the future, and live independently, all while servicing layers of debt that started accumulating before they even finished high school. The Gen Z debt trap isn't just a metaphor. It's a lived experience that shapes choices, limits opportunities, and darkens dreams. Understanding how Gen Z became the most financially burdened generation in history requires seeing the trap for what it is: a system designed to offer endless options while quietly demanding endless payments. It's a cycle that doesn't end with a diploma or a first job. It follows them into adulthood, relationships, and parenthood. It defines their future unless something changes, unless awareness turns into action. How pay-as-you-go traps are built. At first glance, buy now pay later services seem like the perfect solution for a generation struggling to keep up with skyrocketing costs. They promise the ability to get what you need today, without the burden of immediate full payment. No stress, no major financial commitment, just a few small installments spread out over time. To a young adult staring down the reality of student loans, rising rents, and low entry-level wages, it feels like a lifeline. But beneath the surface, these offers are anything but harmless. They are meticulously engineered traps designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities and keep users locked in cycles of rolling debt. The design of buy now pay later platforms is no accident. It is a masterclass in behavioral manipulation. Every part of the process, from the bright, friendly app interfaces to the reassuring messaging, is crafted to lower a shopper's defenses. Terms like easy payments, no interest if paid on time, and instant approval trigger emotional reactions. They replace the natural hesitation we feel about borrowing with feelings of empowerment, convenience, and even excitement. For Gen Z, who have grown up in a world where instant gratification is the norm, this messaging is especially potent. Companies like Afterpay, Klarna, and Affirm have studied this demographic with precision. They understand that younger consumers are less focused on long-term financial consequences and more driven by immediate emotional satisfaction. Marketing campaigns lean heavily on imagery of freedom, independence, and personal expression. Promotions often use influencers, vibrant social media ads, and lifestyle branding to blur the line between responsible purchasing and impulsive spending. What's more, these companies don't just market the product, they market the feeling. Klarna's iconic campaigns, for example, focus on making shoppers feel like they are being savvy and smart by using their service. Affirm brands itself as offering honest financing, emphasizing transparency and empowerment. Afterpay taps into the language of financial literacy, positioning itself as a tool for money management rather than a credit service. These narratives are powerful because they offer young consumers something they desperately want: a sense of control in a financial world that otherwise feels overwhelmingly out of reach. But behind the curated Instagram ads and pastel-colored promises lies a harsher truth. Miss a single payment, and the fees start stacking up. Fall behind on one buy now pay later account while juggling multiple others, and suddenly you're drowning in debt you barely noticed accumulating. Unlike traditional credit cards, buy now pay later services often don't require thorough credit checks. While this can seem like a benefit, it also means that users can overextend themselves across multiple platforms without immediate warning signs. The hidden fees are where the real financial bloodletting begins. Although many services advertise no interest plans, missing a payment triggers penalties that can compound rapidly. Some services quietly hand overdue accounts to debt collectors, adding additional costs and damaging credit scores. What began as a few small, manageable payments can snowball into hundreds or even thousands of dollars owed, often without the borrower fully realizing how deep they've sunk. One of the most dangerous aspects of buy now pay later traps is how deceptively small the individual payments seem. Splitting a $100 purchase into 4 payments of $25 sounds manageable to almost anyone. But multiply that behavior across an entire wardrobe, electronic upgrades, cosmetics, and daily essentials, and suddenly a consumer is juggling 20 or 30 different mini loans, all with staggered due dates and potential penalties. It's not one big debt. It's death by 1,000 cuts. For Gen Z, who already face stagnant wages and increasing living costs, these traps are particularly devastating. The allure of spreading out payments masks the reality that they are living well beyond their means, even on purchases that seem trivial. Buy now pay later services turn wants into needs and needs into ticking time bombs. When your finances are structured around perpetual micro-debts, it becomes almost impossible to save, plan, or invest for the future. The psychological tricks don't stop at marketing. Even the interfaces of buy now pay later apps are carefully designed to minimize the emotional weight of debt. Payment plans are displayed in cheerful, non-threatening fonts. Due dates are casually presented as friendly reminders. There is no moment where the user is forced to confront the full scale of what they owe in one stark figure. Instead, the burden is hidden in plain sight, broken into dozens of easy-to-ignore pieces. Companies defend these tactics by pointing out that buy now pay later offers an alternative to predatory payday loans and high-interest credit cards. In theory, responsible use of these services could help consumers manage their cash flow. But in reality, the ease of access and lack of upfront consequences make it all too easy for young people to slide into dangerous territory without even realizing it. The truth is that the financial system surrounding Gen Z was never built to empower them. It was built to harvest their purchasing power as early and as thoroughly as possible. Buy now pay later services are simply the latest evolution of that machine. They offer the illusion of freedom while tightening the financial chains that will bind an entire generation for decades to come. Understanding how these pay-as-you-go traps are built is the first step toward dismantling them. It starts by recognizing that what feels like a harmless convenience is often a calculated strategy to drive consumption and profit at the expense of long-term financial health. It starts by pulling back the curtain on the companies who sell empowerment while quietly collecting interest and penalties. And it starts by realizing that true financial freedom comes not from access to easy credit, but from learning to say no to the systems that are counting on your silence. The tragedy of the Gen Z debt trap is not that young people made bad choices. It's that they were never given real choices to begin with. When the entire system is built on easy debt and pay later promises, making the right decision requires more than willpower. It requires knowledge, vigilance, and the courage to walk away from a culture that profits from keeping you broke. Credit cards, the gateway to lifelong debt. For many members of Gen Z, receiving their first credit card feels like a rite of passage. The shiny piece of plastic represents freedom, adulthood, and opportunity. It's marketed as a tool for building credit, for unlocking the world, for preparing for the future. But behind the congratulatory emails and instant approvals, a different reality lurks. For most young people, that first credit card is not a gift. It's a carefully disguised curse. Credit card companies know exactly what they are doing when they target 18-year-olds. Fresh into adulthood, with limited financial experience and an eagerness to step into independence, these young consumers are the perfect candidates for easy approvals and low introductory rates. What isn't advertised nearly as loudly are the double-digit interest rates waiting just beyond the promotional period, the late fees tucked into the fine print, and the lifelong habits that these early cards begin to shape. The danger starts small. A few purchases here and there, a meal out with friends, a pair of shoes, maybe a new phone. Each charge feels manageable on its own. After all, the monthly statement shows a minimum payment that looks laughably low. $25. $30. It's easy. It feels harmless. But the real trap isn't the amount owed today. It's the slow and steady accumulation of debt that grows silently over time. Minimum payments are one of the credit card industry's most brilliant weapons. They offer the illusion of control. By allowing borrowers to pay just a small fraction of what they owe, credit card companies ensure that balances linger, interest accrues, and profits soar. What isn't obvious to many first-time cardholders is how long it actually takes to pay off even modest balances if only minimum payments are made. A $200 purchase, left to linger under minimum payments and a 20% interest rate, can balloon into nearly $2,000 over several years. And that's assuming no additional purchases are made along the way. The mechanics of this trap are simple but devastating. Interest compounds monthly, meaning that every unpaid dollar today becomes a bigger burden tomorrow. Late fees add another layer of punishment, often pushing borrowers deeper into the hole with a single missed payment. Penalty interest rates can skyrocket balances even higher, creating a runaway train effect where the original debt is barely recognizable compared to the final amount. Stories of small purchases spiraling into massive debt are tragically common among Gen Z borrowers. One 21-year-old student shared how she used her first credit card to buy textbooks and a few essentials for her dorm room. The initial balance was just under $500. But as unexpected expenses came up, a laptop repair, travel costs, medical bills, she relied more and more on the card. Within 2 years, her balance exceeded $4,000, despite her efforts to make regular payments. Interest charges and minimum payments trapped her in a cycle where she was paying hundreds of dollars a month without making a noticeable dent in what she owed. This is not an isolated case. Nationwide, the average credit card balance among Gen Z users continues to climb, with many carrying multiple cards before the age of 25. As living costs rise and wages stagnate, credit cards often become less a tool for emergencies and more a necessity for survival. Groceries, gas, utility bills. When cash runs short, the plastic bridge fills the gap. But every swipe digs the hole deeper. Credit card companies are well aware of this dynamic. Marketing materials often emphasize responsible use, yet their business models depend on revolving debt, not responsible repayment. If every borrower paid off their balances in full every month, the credit card industry would collapse. It thrives precisely because so many consumers remain trapped, cycling balances month after month, year after year. For Gen Z, the emotional toll of this debt is as real as the financial burden. The constant pressure of looming payments creates anxiety, shame, and a sense of hopelessness. Many feel like they are failing at adulthood before they've even had a chance to build a foundation. Financial struggles become a private burden, hidden behind curated social media profiles and forced smiles. Few want to admit that the sneakers they financed or the weekend trips they charged have turned into years of silent suffering. One of the cruelest ironies is that while credit cards are marketed as tools for financial empowerment, they often end up sabotaging credit scores when balances remain high or payments are missed. This, in turn, makes future borrowing more expensive and more difficult. A young adult who falls into early credit card debt faces not only immediate financial hardship but also long-term obstacles in securing car loans, mortgages, or even rental housing. The Gen Z debt trap doesn't just empty wallets today. It closes doors for decades to come. Breaking free from this trap requires more than just paying down balances. It demands a complete re-education about how credit really works, an education that most young adults are never offered. It demands an awareness that minimum payments are not the goal, but a tool designed to keep borrowers in perpetual debt. And most importantly, it demands a cultural shift in how we view credit itself, moving away from seeing it as a marker of success or freedom and toward understanding it as a dangerous tool that must be wielded with extreme caution. For a generation already struggling against forces outside their control, the first credit card often becomes a silent enemy. Not because Gen Z is careless, but because they are walking into a system that was engineered to prey on optimism, inexperience, and hope. Understanding this is the first step toward rewriting the narrative. Because if the trap is invisible, it remains inescapable. But once seen, it can be dismantled, one smart, stubborn choice at a time. The cost of living mirage. When Gen Z imagines a normal adult life, the dream feels deceptively simple. A modest apartment, reliable transportation, healthy food, the occasional meal out with friends, and maybe enough left over each month to start saving for the future. Yet for millions of young adults today, that basic version of adulthood remains stubbornly out of reach. The cost of simply existing has outpaced wages to such a degree that surviving without constant debt feels like an unattainable fantasy. The truth is, a so-called normal life is no longer affordable for much of Gen Z. Rent prices alone have exploded to levels never seen before. In most cities, even modest one-bedroom apartments now consume over half of a young adult's monthly income. And it's not just rent. The cost of groceries has risen steadily, with fresh produce, meat, and dairy becoming luxury items rather than staples for many households. Basic clothing has shifted from an occasional purchase to a revolving subscription model, where styles are rented and returned to keep pace with fast-changing trends. Even technology, once seen as a one-time investment, has become part of the endless payment cycle. Smartphones, laptops, tablets, all are now offered with tempting pay-as-you-go plans, disguising long-term debt obligations behind low monthly fees. Streaming services, app subscriptions, cloud storage, gym memberships, transportation passes, together, they bleed away any disposable income that might have remained after paying for life's non-negotiables. In this new reality, every part of living has been transformed into a monthly obligation. Ownership has given way to access. Stability has been replaced by constant renewal. Brands encourage consumers to think of commitment in months, not years, normalizing an existence where nothing is ever truly paid off. Instead, young adults find themselves trapped in a cycle where they are forever renting their lifestyles, never accumulating assets, never reaching a financial place where they can breathe easily. A closer look at a typical Gen Z monthly budget paints a grim picture. Take the example of Mia, a 24-year-old marketing assistant living in a mid-sized city. Her after-tax income is about $3,000 a month. She pays $1,500 in rent for a small apartment, $200 for utilities and internet, and $300 for groceries, assuming she cooks most of her meals at home. Transportation, whether car payments, insurance, or public transit, consumes another $300. A phone plan and basic streaming subscriptions add $100 more. That leaves around $600 before factoring in any unexpected expenses, healthcare, clothing, or social activities. It sounds manageable until an unexpected bill appears. A medical co-pay. A car repair. Higher than usual utility bills during a heat wave. With no emergency fund, Mia turns to her credit card or a buy now pay later app to bridge the gap. What starts as a small shortfall quickly becomes an ongoing pattern. Soon, minimum payments eat into her monthly budget, forcing her to rely even more on credit to maintain the same standard of living. Mia's story isn't unique. It's the standard experience for millions of Gen Z adults navigating the high-wire act of living paycheck to paycheck without a safety net. What makes this situation even more dangerous is how normal it feels. Gen Z grew up surrounded by subscription models and payment plans. Renting access to music, movies, clothes, even furniture is not seen as unusual, but rather expected. The idea of saving up for a purchase has been replaced by immediate gratification, often financed through small, ongoing charges that are easy to ignore individually but devastating when combined. Companies have embraced this shift with open arms. Ownership once symbolized achievement. Buying your own car, your own home, your own appliances was a marker of adulthood and independence. Today, marketing emphasizes flexibility, convenience, and experiences over possessions. Car companies push leases over purchases. Furniture brands offer rent-to-own deals. Even clothing brands now offer monthly rental subscriptions, allowing consumers to constantly refresh their wardrobes without ever actually owning a single item. This transformation wasn't accidental. It represents a deliberate pivot in business strategy designed to maximize recurring revenue streams. Subscription services are more predictable and profitable than one-time sales. They ensure that consumers stay tethered to brands indefinitely, making continuous payments instead of building equity or ownership. And for a generation already struggling with stagnant wages and rising costs, these endless monthly commitments feel like a manageable way to live, until the cumulative weight becomes unbearable. The result is a lifestyle built on fragile foundations. Any disruption, a lost job, an unexpected illness, even a minor economic downturn, can send the entire structure crashing down. Without assets to fall back on, without savings to cushion the blow, many young adults find themselves trapped in a cycle of deepening debt, scrambling just to maintain a semblance of normal life. What's most tragic is that many members of Gen Z don't even realize they are trapped. The pay-as-you-go model is so deeply ingrained into their reality that living any other way feels alien. Financial struggles are internalized as personal failings rather than recognized as the inevitable outcome of a system designed to keep consumers perpetually paying without ever truly owning. The cost of living mirage is not just a financial issue. It's a psychological one. It fosters feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and exhaustion. It creates a constant undercurrent of fear, the fear that no matter how hard you work, you will never get ahead, never catch up, never have enough breathing room to feel safe. And in that environment of fear, companies thrive, offering even more subscription services, even more credit, even more ways to keep young consumers locked into an endless cycle of payment and dependence. Understanding how the cost of living has been reshaped into a system of endless financial extraction is critical. It's not about blaming individuals for their choices. It's about recognizing the invisible forces shaping those choices. It's about pulling back the curtain on a culture that profits by normalizing debt as a way of life. And it's about challenging the idea that financial survival must come at the cost of true independence and peace of mind. For Gen Z, breaking free from the illusion will not be easy. It requires more than just budgeting tips or better financial apps. It demands a fundamental rethinking of what it means to live, to own, and to thrive in a world that has taught him to rent their futures one small payment at a time. Psychological toll, anxiety, depression, and hopelessness. Living under constant financial pressure does more than drain a bank account. It reshapes the mind, twists emotions, and quietly erodes the sense of stability that every human being needs to thrive. For Gen Z, the hidden pandemic isn't just about money. It's about the crushing mental toll that spirals from financial insecurity, turning hopes and dreams into a daily battle against anxiety, depression, and deep-rooted despair. Financial stress has long been recognized as a contributor to mental health struggles. But in recent years, the relationship between debt and psychological distress has become even clearer, with study after study confirming what millions are feeling firsthand. Researchers have found that individuals carrying significant debt are more likely to experience symptoms of anxiety, depression, and even suicidal ideation. The mere presence of ongoing financial obligations creates a background noise of worry that never truly fades, disrupting sleep, clouding judgment, and diminishing overall well-being. For Gen Z, this reality is compounded by timing. Entering adulthood during a period of extreme economic uncertainty means that financial fear is baked into their earliest experiences of independence. Instead of viewing money as a tool to build a life, many young adults see it as a constant source of threat. Every unexpected bill, every bounced payment, every collection notice feels not just like a financial setback, but like a personal failure. Over time, these experiences don't just affect bank accounts. They carve scars into confidence, motivation, and hope. The data is sobering. A major national survey revealed that over 70% of Gen Z respondents cited finances as their #1 source of stress, more than relationships, career prospects, or even health concerns. Another study showed that young adults with significant debt reported depression rates more than twice as high as their debt-free peers. Living paycheck to paycheck is not just financially exhausting. It is mentally exhausting, draining emotional reserves with every missed payment, every mounting late fee, every small financial emergency that threatens to tip life into chaos. As the financial weight grows heavier, many in Gen Z are seeking help, but not always from traditional sources. Financial therapy, a once niche practice blending money management advice with psychological counseling, has exploded in popularity among young adults. Therapists report record numbers of clients in their 20s and early 30s seeking support not just for budgeting tips, but for help processing the shame, fear, and anxiety tied to their financial lives. It's a quiet revolution, an acknowledgement that you cannot separate mental health from financial health, not anymore. Burnout, too, has become a defining feature of the Gen Z experience. The constant grind of working multiple jobs, chasing side hustles, and trying to maintain appearances while battling invisible debt drains physical and emotional energy to dangerous levels. Many young adults report feeling exhausted not from physical labor, but from the unrelenting psychological pressure of never being able to rest, never feeling secure, never believing that they are truly caught up or ahead. Behind every statistic is a real story, often carried silently because financial despair remains one of society's last taboos. One young man, burdened with student loans and credit card debt, described how he avoided opening his mailbox for months, terrified of the bills he could no longer pay. A young woman, struggling under layers of buy now pay later obligations, shared how she skipped meals to afford minimum payments, all while posting carefully curated photos on social media to hide her reality. Another student, juggling tuition, rent, and groceries on credit, confessed to feeling more hopeless with every swipe of her card, knowing each transaction pushed her deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. These stories remain largely unspoken because financial failure is often seen as personal failure. In a culture that celebrates wealth and success, admitting financial struggle feels like admitting defeat. For Gen Z, raised on images of entrepreneurial victories, influencer lifestyles, and endless success stories, acknowledging financial hardship carries an almost unbearable stigma. The shame isolates them, preventing open conversations and cutting them off from support systems that might otherwise offer relief. Yet, despite the silence, the impact is visible everywhere. Rising rates of anxiety disorders among young adults. Increases in depression diagnoses. A growing mental health crisis that overlaps perfectly with the timeline of their financial struggles. The connection is undeniable, and it demands attention not just from individuals, but from society as a whole. Addressing the Gen Z debt trap isn't just about fixing budgets or teaching better financial habits. It's about recognizing the profound emotional damage that financial insecurity inflicts. It's about dismantling the shame that surrounds money struggles and creating spaces where young people can seek help without fear of judgment. It's about understanding that behind every late payment and mounting balance is a human being fighting battles few can see. The psychological toll of financial stress is real, and its scars are deep. Without intervention, without compassion, without systemic changes, Gen Z risks becoming a generation not just burdened by debt, but haunted by it, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. But there is also hope. Awareness is rising. Conversations are starting. More young adults are refusing to suffer in silence, seeking help, building communities, and demanding change. The financial and emotional struggles Gen Z faces today are not a personal failing. They are the predictable outcome of systems designed to extract as much as possible, leaving individuals to bear the consequences alone. Understanding this is the first step toward healing, both financially and mentally. Because in the end, true wealth isn't just about dollars and cents. It's about reclaiming peace of mind, escape plans that only make it worse. When the weight of debt becomes too heavy, desperation starts to creep in. For many members of Gen Z, the feeling of being financially trapped leads to a frantic search for escape routes. They are willing to try anything, take any risk, trust any promise if it means breaking free from the crushing cycle of debt and financial insecurity. But far too often, the so-called escape plans they turn to only tighten the trap, leaving them even more exhausted, disillusioned, and broke than before. One of the most insidious traps comes disguised as a solution: debt consolidation. On the surface, it seems logical. Combine all your debts into one simple payment. Lower your interest rates. Simplify your financial life. Ads for debt consolidation services flood social media feeds, promising easy fixes and stress-free lives. But many of these services prey specifically on the most vulnerable, offering predatory loans with hidden fees, ballooning interest rates, and fine print designed to ensnare borrowers even deeper into financial chaos. Gen Z, often overwhelmed and lacking experience with complex financial products, are prime targets for these scams. A consolidation loan might start with a manageable monthly payment, but if the borrower misses even a single installment, penalties skyrocket. Some companies offer loans that extend repayment over 10 or 15 years, meaning a young person could still be paying for today's grocery bills in their 40s. In chasing simplicity, many find themselves in more complicated, expensive, and punishing financial arrangements that stretch their debt over a lifetime. Alongside debt consolidation scams, another mirage shines brightly in the distance: the promise of fast wealth. In a world dominated by social media success stories, where influencers flaunt six-figure incomes from dropshipping, crypto investments, or online side businesses, it's easy to believe that one lucky move could erase years of financial pain overnight. Crypto in particular has exploded as a supposed salvation for financially struggling Gen Z. Stories of overnight millionaires dominate headlines, convincing young investors that all they need is the right coin, the right timing, the right app. But behind the viral success stories lies a darker reality. Crypto markets are volatile, unregulated, and ruthlessly predatory. Scams are rampant, from fake coins to rug pulls to phishing schemes disguised as investment opportunities. Many young adults, desperate for a way out of their financial struggles, have poured savings, rent money, even borrowed funds into risky crypto ventures, only to watch their investments evaporate in days. The devastation is not just financial. It's emotional, breeding deep feelings of betrayal, regret, and hopelessness. The allure of fast money extends beyond crypto. So-called financial gurus crowd platforms like TikTok and YouTube, selling courses, mentorship programs, and step-by-step blueprints to wealth. They promise easy success, passive income, and freedom from the daily grind, all for a small upfront fee. Yet time and time again, these programs deliver little more than empty advice and upsell after upsell, leaving participants poorer, not richer. The dream of escaping debt through a magic formula remains just that, a dream. Even legitimate side hustles, once hailed as the ultimate solution for financial struggles, have begun to reveal their darker side. Initially, the idea sounds empowering. Drive for a rideshare company on weekends. Deliver groceries in your spare time. Sell crafts online. Monetize hobbies. Hustle your way to financial freedom. But the reality for many Gen Z workers is far more brutal. The gig economy, once seen as a ladder out of poverty, has become another form of exploitation, demanding more time, more energy, and offering less stability than ever before. Side hustles, instead of providing relief, often lead to burnout. Working 60 to 70 hours a week between a full-time job and multiple gigs leaves little time for rest, relationships, or self-care. Earnings from side hustles are often unpredictable, with workers shouldering the full burden of expenses like gas, vehicle maintenance, and platform fees. Rather than creating wealth, many find themselves trapped in an endless loop of work, debt payments, and exhaustion, with no real progress to show for it. Real-world stories paint a painful picture. A 23-year-old graphic designer, trying to pay down student loans, started freelancing online in addition to her day job. After months of working 16-hour days, she found herself more broke than before, having spent her earnings on equipment, marketing, and platform fees. Another young man, lured by crypto success stories, emptied his savings account to invest in a new digital currency, only to see its value plummet to zero within a week. A college dropout, desperate to escape minimum wage jobs, spent thousands on an online mentorship program that promised six-figure success but delivered nothing beyond recycled motivational quotes. Each story is different, but the pattern is heartbreakingly familiar. In seeking escape, many young people find themselves trapped even deeper. The hope that carried them forward turns to disillusionment. The energy they invested turns to exhaustion. And the dream of freedom becomes another burden on top of the ones they already carry. The system is perfectly designed to offer false hope. It dangles visions of success just out of reach, convincing individuals that failure is personal, not systemic. If you didn't make it with your side hustle, you didn't hustle hard enough. If your crypto investment failed, you should have picked better. If your debt consolidation plan backfired, you must not have read the fine print carefully enough. In this way, blame is shifted from the architects of these traps onto the victims themselves, ensuring that the cycle of struggle and shame continues. Understanding the nature of these false escape plans is crucial for breaking free from the Gen Z debt trap. The solution to financial insecurity is not gambling on quick wins or trusting in too good to be true promises. It is building slow, steady, sustainable financial habits grounded in reality, not fantasy. It is recognizing that the path out of debt and into financial freedom requires patience, education, and often a radical rejection of the consumer culture that created the trap in the first place. The escape routes Gen Z are offered today are not designed to liberate them. They are designed to keep them running in circles, exhausted and compliant. True escape begins not with a new loan or a new hustle, but with a new way of thinking, one that prioritizes long-term security over short-term illusions, and self-empowerment over systemic dependence. A system designed to keep them there. The financial struggles facing Gen Z are not simply the result of bad luck or poor personal choices. They are the result of a system meticulously designed to produce dependence, confusion, and lifelong debt. From the earliest years of their education to their first steps into adulthood, Gen Z was placed on a path paved with financial traps disguised as opportunities. It begins in school, long before the first credit card is offered or the first buy now pay later plan is signed. Despite living in a world where financial decision-making determines almost every major life outcome, most schools still fail to teach even the most basic principles of money management. Concepts like budgeting, compound interest, credit scores, taxes, and investment strategies are often absent from curriculums entirely. Instead, students are trained to pass standardized tests and memorize historical facts, while the real-world skills they desperately need to survive are left to chance. The absence of financial education is not an accident. It serves the interests of a system that profits from financial ignorance. Without an understanding of how credit works, young adults are more likely to fall into the traps set by banks, credit card companies, and financial institutions. They are more likely to rely on payday loans, max out credit cards, default on student loans, and accumulate fees that generate billions in profits each year. If Gen Z had been armed with comprehensive financial literacy before stepping into adulthood, the landscape would look very different. Young adults would approach credit offers with skepticism, not excitement. They would recognize the dangers of minimum payments, see through the marketing tactics of buy now pay later services, and prioritize saving and investing over impulse spending. But without that knowledge, they walk blind into a battlefield where they are outmatched from the start. The institutions that profit from this ignorance are vast and powerful. Banks and credit card companies rake in billions annually from interest charges and late fees. Fintech companies offering microloans and installment plans profit handsomely from missed payments and rolling debt balances. Even governments benefit indirectly, as consumer spending fueled by easy credit props up fragile economies and boosts short-term growth metrics. Meanwhile, the individuals carrying the debt grow poorer, more anxious, and less able to participate meaningfully in the economy beyond their roles as perpetual consumers. One of the most chilling realities is how normalized this has all become. Massive student loan burdens are seen as a rite of passage. Credit card debt is considered a standard part of adult life. Renting everything from housing to cars to furniture is presented as a smart lifestyle choice rather than a symptom of systemic failure. The fact that millions live paycheck to paycheck is brushed off as inevitable, even desirable, in an economy addicted to constant spending. But what if it's not just negligence? What if the system was intentionally designed this way? The question is uncomfortable, but it must be asked. After all, the patterns are too consistent to be purely accidental. Every step of the way, young adults are funneled into dependency. They are encouraged to borrow for education without fully understanding the terms. They are bombarded with credit offers before they have steady incomes. They are lured into subscription models and financing plans that ensure they are always paying, never owning. They are taught to measure success not by savings or investments but by the appearance of wealth, easily purchased through debt. The incentives align perfectly. Corporations generate steady revenue streams. Governments enjoy higher GDP numbers fueled by consumer spending. Financial institutions profit from interest and penalties. Media companies thrive on advertising dollars from brands pushing more products and services. In this system, financially independent citizens are not the goal. Perpetual borrowers are far more profitable. Even when reforms are proposed, they often fall short. Calls for mandatory financial literacy classes are met with resistance, citing curriculum constraints or funding issues. Efforts to regulate predatory lending practices are watered down by lobbying pressure. In rare cases where young adults manage to escape the debt trap, they often do so despite the system, not because of it. It is a bitter pill to swallow, but understanding the depth of the problem is the first step toward meaningful change. Gen Z did not create the conditions that led to their financial struggles. They inherited a system rigged against them, a system that profits from their confusion, their desperation, and their dreams. Recognizing this reality is not about embracing victimhood. It is about reclaiming agency. It is about seeing clearly the forces at play and refusing to participate blindly in a game designed for others to win. It is about building new models of financial empowerment that prioritize education, transparency, and true ownership over endless consumption. The Gen Z debt trap is not an accident of history. It is the result of deliberate choices made over decades by powerful institutions. But history is not destiny. Knowledge is power, and awareness is the first weapon in dismantling the structures that seek to keep young adults financially shackled. Gen Z has the tools, the energy, and the resilience to rewrite the story, but only if they recognize the game they have been forced to play. The choice moving forward is stark. Continue walking the well-worn path of debt, stress, and silent suffering, or forge a new road built on understanding, intentionality, and real freedom. It won't be easy. It won't happen overnight. But every small act of resistance, every choice to save rather than spend, every refusal to fall for the next flashy payment plan, every demand for real financial education, chips away at a system built on exploitation. The future belongs to those who can see through the illusions. Gen Z has already shown it is a generation willing to question, to challenge, and to demand better. Now it must turn that energy toward the financial structures quietly shaping every aspect of their lives. Because true freedom isn't bought. It's built, one informed decision at a time. Is there a way out? It's easy to look at the mountain of challenges facing Gen Z and feel overwhelmed. The crushing weight of student loans, the endless cycle of buy now pay later obligations, the silent suffocation of credit card debt, it all paints a bleak picture. But beneath the surface of financial despair, there is something far more powerful waiting to be unleashed, the strength to fight back. The system may be designed to keep Gen Z trapped, but it is not invincible. It relies on confusion, on shame, on silence. And those are precisely the weapons that can be taken away. Awareness is the first, most crucial step toward breaking free. By understanding how debt traps are built, how financial literacy has been deliberately withheld, and how corporations profit from endless consumerism, Gen Z can begin to see the invisible chains for what they are. And once you see the trap, you can start to dismantle it. Building real financial resilience will not happen overnight. It requires step-by-step changes, small decisions repeated daily until they carve new paths forward. It starts with questioning every offer that promises immediate gratification. It grows with every dollar saved instead of spent, every credit card balance paid in full, every subscription cancelled in favor of ownership and self-reliance. It strengthens with the building of emergency funds, with investments made thoughtfully, with skills developed to create long-term value rather than chasing quick wins. But beyond the practical steps, resilience is also about mindset. It is about rejecting the idea that your worth is tied to what you own, to the brands you wear, to the appearance of success funded by debt. It is about embracing the slow, quiet, often invisible work of true financial independence, even when it feels like everyone else is racing ahead. It is about choosing patience over panic, intention over impulse, reality over illusion. Gen Z has already shown extraordinary resilience in facing challenges previous generations could never have imagined. Economic recessions, a global pandemic, social upheavals, all while trying to find their footing in a world that keeps shifting beneath them. If there is any generation equipped to break the cycle, it is this one. They are tech-savvy, resourceful, community-driven, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. The Gen Z debt trap is real. The struggles are real. But so is the potential for change. Every informed choice weakens the system that profits from ignorance. Every act of financial self-education is an act of rebellion against a culture designed to exploit. Every refusal to fall for another shiny trap is a victory. The system may have been built to keep Gen Z down, but it underestimated something crucial. It underestimated their ability to adapt, to resist, to fight for a better future. Gen Z is stronger than the system ever planned for. And that strength, that fierce, relentless strength, is exactly what will tear the debt traps apart, one smart decision